Hi, will you marry me? It's a question most people answer with their heart, not their head. But should they? For the first time ever, fewer than half of all UK adults are married or in a civil partnership. Cohabiting, it's a completely normal modern life choice. The problem is the law has not kept pace with it, and the financial and legal gap between married and unmarried couples, it's far bigger than most people realise. So the question we're asking is, legally and financially, is it worth getting married?
The judge will use their common sense, look at the people in front of them, work out who paid for the dog, who pays for the vet bills.
Like, how are you going to prove that? It's going to be incredibly messy.
Yeah. No one's tracking who bought the vacuum, who paid for the cooker, unless you've got a spreadsheet like me.
With me today, another Philippa Dolan, a solicitor and partner at Collyer, Bristow. She's also co-host of their legal podcast, Law Torn. Philippa has spent decades advising clients about prenups, divorce and custody cases. Mike Donkor's here with us too. He's a former stockbroker turned financial planner. He provides regulated advice to help individuals and couples simplify complex financial decisions around issues like employee share schemes, inheritance tax. And from PensionBee this time, we're joined by Chief Marketing Officer Jasper Martens. He's been with PensionBee since, almost the very beginning?
The beginning, yeah.
And it is not your first time on the podcast.
It isn't.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Now, look, I've got a question for all of you. Assuming you find someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with, do you personally think marriage is the way to go? Philippa?
It's hard to generalise.
You
Sorry, I'm a lawyer.
Yeah. She's equivocating right out of the game.
I am, yes.
For you, then?
I got married to someone I'm still very friendly with. We had 2 children. We got divorced after a few years. I did the divorce. It was all fine.
DIY divorce.
Totally trust my then husband.
Did you marry again?
I did marry again.
How did you two meet?
He came to see me as a client because he was getting divorced. And we fell in love.
Okay.
Sounds like a rom-com.
It does.
Sounds like an episode of Suits.
I don't know if that's romantic or not, but it's handy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who I've been married to for many years.
Mike, how about you?
I've been married for about 11 years now.
And was it always going to be marriage?
So yeah, I never really over thought about it. It was just, okay, we're together, going to have kids, and then we're going to get married. And that was kind of the process for me. Yeah.
And that's what happened?
Yeah.
I mean, for the record, I'm married, second marriage, like Philippa. So, fair to say I'm quite positive about it myself. Which brings me to Jasper.
Well, I'm not married myself, but I've been together with my partner for 18 years. So you can kind of consider that to be quite a long-term engagement.
Long relationship.
Yes, long relationship. And I think I've never been too keen on it.
Tell me why.
A couple of reasons. First of all, quite a lot of people around me got divorced quite early on in the process. A second, I'm gay. And in not many countries, marriage was an option on the table. And my age hopefully doesn't show too much. But from the Netherlands, it was always possible, where I'm from originally. But I'd say in other countries, it wasn't always an option. Here in the UK, only, I don't know when it was actually legalised or what was possible.
I think that came in 2014.
So there were 2 reasons for it, really. I see a lot of marriages fail.
Yeah.
And I just want to keep it nice and clean if the time ever comes that me and my partner are no longer together. But we've been going for 18 years and we're quite happy.
What you say is right. Not all marriages go well. I mean, Mike, marriage is declining anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. 42% of marriages end in divorce. Naturally, we are seeing an increase of cohabitants in the UK as well. It's about 3.5 million people. It's increased by about 140%. And we're seeing a lot more kids being born from unmarried couples as well.
Philippa, there is this term, isn't there, that people throw around like common law marriage.
Yes.
So is that a thing?
No.
So
Absolutely not.
And it doesn't matter how long you've been together?
Doesn't matter. None of that counts. You can be together for 60 years.
Doesn't matter if you've got kids? Doesn't matter if you own property together?
They make a difference, clearly, because you've got a claim if you've got property with someone, and children are separate. Children do have claims, but they're the
you're still not
children's
married
claims.
in
They're
any
not
way.
the parents' claims, and the parents have no rights.
I mean, I do wonder how many people actually know that.
I don't think a lot of people know. I think it's quite low. In the UK, it's around 46% of people believe that common law marriages exist, and it doesn't. So people are cohabiting together and assuming that the government or the law is protecting them in one way, shape or form when it actually isn't.
That's a big problem, isn't it? And we'll get into the why of that in due course, but it's fascinating to hear. Essentially, should we just nail down civil partnership as well, Philippa? Because obviously, not everyone marries, but people do have civil partnerships. Are your rights the same?
Exactly.
Okay.
Absolutely the same.
But Jasper, you haven't done either.
No, we haven't done either. So we are together, we're cohabiting, I would say, and we will probably get later into it. But certain things that are common, like our house, we've got that sorted. You have to make sure that those things, what happens if we are separating or even one of us passes away? What happens to the house? I think you need to take care of those things. But there are other ways to do it rather than going into either a civil partnership or getting married.
Okay. Well, I don't want to persuade you to anything different, but I'm going to ask Mike to talk about actual financial benefits of being married.
Well,
Are there any?
There's loads.
Go on then,
There's
tell
loads.
us.
Ultimately, I always say to clients when I'm speaking to them about this stuff is what is important for you and the people that you care about if you wasn't here. And I think when you start to answer that question, then the question of marriage starts to become a bit more attractive in some circumstances. The idea of marriage is essentially, I guess, from a legal or financial perspective, is more of a kind of an automatic framework of what could happen in the event of something later on. And that can save a lot of time, a lot of hassle, maybe a lot of cost as well. So, if I was to touch on one thing, for example, inheritance tax, Jasper, you're just talking about property. If you're married and something was to happen to one of the spouses, your property could automatically be transferred to your surviving spouse.
Without inheritance tax?
Without inheritance tax.
That's a key difference, isn't it,
Quite
Philippa? That could be a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think about in London, the average kind of house price is around 550,000, probably upwards of that. We start thinking about inheritance tax, those numbers can just keep going up and up and up without you even doing anything, just by sitting in the property.
It's quite a compelling thought, that, isn't it, Jasper?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just got to lay that out there.
Jasper's intrigued.
I think the inheritance tax is not something I would have thought about per se. For me, it was more about, and this sounds awful thing to say because we are very happy together, but it was more from a point of view and what if we decide to split up?
Yeah.
Like what would happen? We just take each other's share of the house and that's it really. But what if one other person passes away? And if you're not married or in a civil partnership, inheritance tax might be on the table versus not on the table.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a consideration.
We are going to talk more about what happens if someone unfortunately dies a bit later on. But are there other tax benefits we should be thinking
Well, capital gains tax.
Right. So how does that work?
If you are an owner of property or shares, some kind of investment, you could effectively transfer some of those assets or that equity to your spouse at no capital gains tax. I guess one of the key benefits there is you're now in a position where it's not just one allowance that you can maximise because everyone has a capital gains allowance of £3,000 a year. So effectively you could split that share, provide it to your partner, and they can also use their allowance if they were to sell those shares as well.
Am I right remembering there used to be something around income tax as well for married couples?
So if one of the spouses is not earning and the other one is a basic taxpayer, then they could still transfer the marriage allowance, about £1,260, something along those lines.
Okay, so there's a marginal gain there that's worth thinking about. A little gain. You can
save about £250 or so. Obviously, be dependent on the circumstances, but there is something there.
It would be useful, Philippa, to kind of talk about what happens to an unmarried couple's finances when they split. If you're just living together, cohabiting, no agreement, no nothing, what happens to all the stuff? However long you've been together, what happens to all the things you?
Well, it's like two people living together. That's all it is. They could be flatmates, So whoever owns what, they own it. And I mean, you might have an argument over the sofa if you went out and bought it together, but probably you own it half each.
Okay, so here's a common scenario. It certainly was in the past. I think still is. girlfriend moves into boyfriend's flat or house. They end up staying together for years. She's paying other bills. Maybe he's paying the mortgage. Maybe she's contributing, but it's kind of off the books. You know, they're sharing their household finances, but he still owns the house. So they're together 20 years. At the end, the house is his outright, is it?
It really depends what she's been contributing. If
Would you have to prove it?
He doesn't agree, yes. Messiest of litigation.
That's the thing,
That's
isn't
very
it? In those relationships, you don't keep notes, do you? You just pay bills.
No one's tracking who bought the vacuum, who paid for the cooker. Unless you've got a spreadsheet like me, you know. So.
But certainly, if the property is the main asset, then if it's in one person's name, you're a bit stuffed. If you're the other person, you can run arguments about, well, I did pay the mortgage, say, which will give you some claim.
Or some other household bill in lieu of the mortgage.
Depends on the bill, really. It needs to be tied to the house.
So say you were paying utility bills, maybe you're paying for a cleaner. Would that do it? Or the council tax?
Nah,
Cleaner wouldn't do it.
No? So that's really worth thinking about for people living in a property which isn't in their name, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, a very significant issue. Does it matter if you have children together in that situation?
Completely different in that the children have claims. So the parent, who is the one who's lost out on the deal, she, as it probably is, can make claims on behalf of the children.
For maintenance?
For maintenance, but also for things like, oh, he's great at the piano, I want him to go and spend 3 weeks in Germany this summer. And if the money's there in the relationship or with the other person, then you can claim lump sums. You can also claim to stay in the house on behalf of the children until they're adults and because of their accommodation needs. But it's very complicated and not straightforward at all.
Okay. So Jasper, have you and your partner talked about that sort of thing? You have?
For me, it was always explained. So when we moved to London, he owned the apartment outright. He was basically my landlord. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And that's how you need to see it. We sold that apartment 2.5 years later and then bought the property together. And then from that moment onwards, of course, things will have changed. Okay. I think it's you should never consider, even if you contribute, like, how are you going to prove that? Yeah. It's going to be incredibly messy.
Really hard.
And you just need to consider it like you're paying your partner rent.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to describe it.
You say that, but people aren't always thinking about it from that perspective because, you know, back in the day, there used to be one breadwinner of the household. And if that person, maybe it was the man of the house that was bringing in the bacon, as they say, and the income, and maybe the wife was taking care of the children, then she may not have, or the girlfriend in this case, then she may not have all of the financials to feel like she's contributing to justify the beneficial interests of the household, effectively.
As we all know, you know, if there's kids, I mean, someone certainly initially is staying at home to look after them and maybe cutting down their work or not working altogether, possibly for very long periods of time. So then you do get that financial inequality, and it is mostly, even now, still women, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So, you know, this is definitely something to think about. I mean, do you often see, Mike, people with who they've shared a home for years and they don't have anything in writing?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Wow.
I mean, even if you think about wills in general, I think it's about 47% of people don't have wills still.
Yeah. It all comes down to the kind of, it's one of those things that a lot of people just don't understand well.
Yeah.
And they're putting it off.
Yes.
And time goes really fast. And it's the same with other financial things. Yeah. And being a marketeer in pensions, I can feel the pain because it's one of those things you will put off. Yeah. You do that on a Sunday afternoon when it's raining. Let's just look at our will. Let's look at our situation. Let's have that conversation. But you will be watching Netflix instead, I think. And that's the problem. That you need to fight that inertia kicking in and take control and talk to you about what are my circumstances like, because time flies.
And with marriage, of course, we're kind of, you know, here we are talking about legalities and money. This is a romantic relationship. There is trust there, right? So, I mean, Philippa, tell me, but I'm guessing that is the thing that stops otherwise perfectly rational people thinking about this in a way that they might otherwise do. If it was a business relationship, for example.
You mean they don't want to suggest that there may come a time when the other person's going to behave badly?
Yeah, well, it doesn't occur to them. You know, they're enough. You don't. I mean, we've all been there.
Jasper, you were saying you didn't want things to go wrong if you split up from your partner. But of course, it doesn't have to go wrong.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, they're really decent.
Yeah.
And they're fair. And actually, whether you're married or unmarried, we tend to know about the minority of people who behave badly for whatever reason, rage, jealousy, mental health, whatever it is. But a lot of people don't behave badly. So the benefits, I suppose, of getting married, other than the fact that I think it's a lovely romantic gesture, it's going to be tax, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
it's going to be tax.
Jasper, you mentioned it earlier. A lot of people just don't know. A lot of people are not looking into this. A lot of people are delaying the actions. It's very easy to just kick the can down the road.
You talked about marriage being almost like a template.
Yeah.
If you get married, you kind of get a set of circumstances and rule sets. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not very much in the know, it kind of gives you kind of like a framework, safety net.
Yeah.
But I still believe that beyond that framework or the template, you gotta switch your mind on when it comes to these things. Sometimes marriage might not be adequate if there is wealth involved on both sides, for example. So I do think people need to keep thinking and don't rely on it too much.
And also, there's that nice feeling you get, and this is what drives me to get financial stuff done. It feels so good when you've done it.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It feels so...
Yes.
Okay, job done. Hi, it's me, Philippa, just interrupting for a moment to say a big thanks to all of you who've subscribed to the Pension Confident podcast. Our mission is to help you feel more financially confident, and we are thrilled with the community we're growing here on YouTube. If you haven't already done it, hit that subscribe button right underneath this video so you never miss an episode. Meantime, enjoy the rest of this month's conversation. I want to ask about pensions, because we've talked about property, we've talked about kids. Pensions are often a huge asset in a relationship, aren't they?
Yeah.
And if the relationship ends, how the pensions are divided? I mean, do you have any arrangement?
Yes, we do, and
impressive.
And he's not getting everything, and I'm not getting anything from his side either. If one of us passes away, we've looked at our retirement planning. I work for a pension firm. If I didn't have done that, then it would have been a huge scandal.
Yeah.
So we've looked at our retirement planning, so we know our number. And it means that in my circumstances, some of it will go to my nephews, going past my sister, but to the nephews.
That's for another podcast.
Yeah,
That's for another podcast. No.
What did she do?
We talked about it. And we talked about it. For me, the most important thing was, if anything happened to us, can I stay in my house? Can he stay in the house? Second is, are you financially, do you got your number to sustain yourself well and comfortably until the end of your life?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. Then, other than the romantic reasons, we couldn't come up with reasons to get married.
Yeah. I want to ask Philippa about this, though, because pensions, as I've said, it's often a huge asset in a relationship. And much like paying a mortgage, paying into a pension can be leveraged and enabled by another partner paying for other stuff. So it's not quite as simple as, I paid into it, so it's mine. If you're unmarried and you split up, what happens if there's a big pension pot in the relationship?
You have no claim.
You've got no claim on it.
You have no claim. And also, if it's a pension that's not a private pension, but it's a
workplace pension.
A workplace pension, I think they've changed the rules to some extent for unmarried couples. There were cases in the last few years, but as a general rule, you'll just lose the pension completely.
Really?
Yeah.
So, Philippa, you can put legal arrangements in place in advance of all this, can't you, against that possibility happening?
Pension sharing order,
yes.
but only if you're getting divorced, and that's something the court has to approve.
You can't have that if you're not married in the first place?
No.
Okay,
that's on the other side.
That is another point worth thinking about, particularly I would say for later life couples or high income couples who've got, these pension pots can be very substantial. That is a big asset to walk away from.
And I think it's a really important thing to bear in mind, especially if one partner has a much smaller pension than the other. Then I think it becomes a really unfair situation if the person that passes away or you're getting a divorce has the bigger pot, then the other is literally left with nothing. And we see that quite often at pension.
But if you're getting divorced, you'll have an equality probably what the pensions are worth.
Yeah.
So it is a reason for getting married, a financial reason.
So I think what we're saying here is this is something that definitely needs thinking about. Married, unmarried, whatever. If you're in a relationship, there are pensions involved. Have a think about that. It's not unromantic. It's just rational. Talking of kind of sharing assets, and It's very different to pensions, but I want to ask about pets. Because
I was thinking about that.
Don't split
I was
those in half.
thinking about
this
that.
is a thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? That's cropping up in legal disputes quite a lot at the moment. So is there, Philippa, firstly, a difference if you're married or unmarried and the ownership of your communal pets?
No, but I can say there is no difference if you're married or unmarried.
Okay.
And they are still, I think, treated as chattels, so they're still treated as objects.
So how do the
Like a
pets,
sofa.
like
Yes.
a sofa, how do they get divvied up?
You put the pet in the middle and the parents on both sides, and you wait to see which.
So you literally have to have a bickering around who's
Yeah.
getting the sofa, who's getting the dog.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're a vengeful, angry person, and you know the other person really loves
wants
the
the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
then it's quite a good weapon to
Wow.
employ.
So you
Have you
get
seen
more
people go to
assets.
court for that?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
And how does the court decide who the dog
Well,
should go to?
I think it's complicated. It's not really it's not a family case. It's a civil case. But I think that the judge will use their common sense, look at the people in front of them,
Wow.
work out who paid for the dog, who pays for the vet bills, who takes them for walks the most, who's at home with them the most.
Well, these things are worth thinking about. I'm wondering whether there shouldn't be some
Keep your
arrangement put in
receipts.
place.
Keep the receipts.
Can you have shared custody of your pet?
Yes, you can have share, but I haven't seen it written into an order, but certainly a lot of people do have shared arrangements.
So now we have talked about this sad situation where one partner dies, and protecting yourself in that situation, because as you said, Mike, I think it's not even half of adults in this country have a will now. So there are big implications there. But I am wondering, Philippa, if, setting aside the question of married, not married, does a will, I mean, obviously this doesn't cope with the end of a relationship if you decide to split, but if you stay together, someone dies and you have wills, are you covered whether you're married or you're not?
Yes,
Okay.
not for tax, but certainly for who you're leaving your estate to. Yes,
Okay.
it would be a very sensible thing to do if you didn't want to get married, but you love the person you live with, and you wouldn't want to see them, on the streets if you died. Certainly, you should make them a beneficiary of your will.
But Mike, I'm guessing, lots of people you deal with don't do that. And tax-wise, as you've said, it's not as advantageous.
If you're not married, yeah, definitely. I think you have to be very careful about the consequences of that. And this is where the kind of planning comes into place, because it's only at that point that people start to really identify what's important to them and what they actually want to hold on to. A lot of the time I'm speaking to people about property being passed on to their siblings, spouses from a previous relationship, stuff like that, and having to find out at the end that it's not what they originally thought it was going to be, because they haven't put those structures in place.
Philippa, if you hadn't got married and you just decided you were going to cohabit with your partner, what legal arrangements would you have put in place to do that?
None, I imagine.
Really? You're a
Being me.
lawyer. I can't believe she just
It's
said that.
cobbler's shoes, isn't it? I haven't got a pension. I am the worst person.
We're going to have a chat, Philippa.
I think that's absolutely right. Everyone is shocked. Very, very shocked.
But I probably wouldn't. I mean, obviously, what you should do is make sure that they are on the title, investigate pensions. I mean, anything else, any other property you've got.
Pets. Yeah.
Pets, yeah.
I think if you decide not to get married and you live together for a long time, I think for me, I always compare it to, it's almost like a self-invested relationship instead of a self-invested personal pension. Like it's a do-it-yourself arrangement. You really have to think about the details. Like, okay, so what do we do with the house? What do we do with the pensions, like you've just mentioned? You got to do the work, though. If you're not doing anything, you see many of those as your clients, you will be left in tears.
Yeah.
So you will have to do the work. I think the argument for marriage, if you, aside from the romantic side of things, is it does give you that template. So things will get sorted. But if you're not getting married, it's like it's a self-invested relationship.
Can you have a prenup if you're not married? I mean, a version of a prenup, as it were.
Well, yes, you can. You can have a cohabitation agreement.
So is that what people should be doing then?
The property and the pensions are probably the main issues. But some people do, and you can put all sorts of things in them.
Lay out proper, rational.
Yeah, who's going to take out
who gets what?
The rubbish? Who's going to take the dog for a walk whenever? Who's going to, you can put it in agreement. It probably does help. I mean, personally, I couldn't be asked, but it probably would help if you had.
That is exactly.
Use that phrase.
Well, that is exactly.
Couldn't be asked.
The problem.
Yeah.
I couldn't be asked.
But maybe
most people.
But I can imagine. I know some people who probably would benefit from that, and they'd stick to the rules, and it would make their relationship more relaxed.
But Jasper, you don't have one of those, Jasper. You don't have.
We don't. And I think the only thing I would say is what we do on we made the agreement on an annual basis to just revisit some of the things we said we were going to do. I couldn't, we bought the house in 2012. Give you an example. I've been building up my pension since I've moved to London in 2009. But guess what? My nephews were born and they're 6 and 11. So guess what? You gotta, where does the money go when I pass away? You gotta change, you gotta tweak. Maybe not every year, but make it a habit. Every year, use that rainy Sunday afternoon and actually do look at it again. Because if you're not getting married, you've set up the rules yourself. So you also make sure that you have to stick to those rules or you have to make changes.
So do you do that with your partner or just...
Every year we will have a conversation. And
you
it's
do?
like, hey, what do you think?
Yeah.
Is he equally keen? Is one of you more proactive than the other?
Well, he was always more keen than I was. But I have been on a journey and I've seen the light. And I think it's really important that you love each other. So you also look after each other.
Yeah.
And therefore review it on a regular basis because things can change. Over time, our incomes will have changed. We look at each other's wealth and it's like, what does everybody, and are you okay? Are you comfortable?
Who's paying for what?
Yeah. And this is not killing any romantic relationship. These are just reasonable questions you need to ask yourself.
I think the problem is people focus too much on the actual paperwork and not the intentions behind it.
Yeah.
What is important to you? A financial plan isn't a piece of paper. It's an evolving plan. So as your situation changes, so should your plan. I think sometimes people are worried too much on the contractual agreement as opposed to if somebody was to pass away, what does that actually look like for your kids? What does that look like for your partner?
Or even just the relationship comes to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what thankfully normally happens, isn't it? In relationship breakup, it's before, it's earlier in life and people just go their separate ways. But you still got all this stuff to untangle, haven't you? And Philippa and I both know about this from having gone through divorce. It's complicated, and we were married. If we hadn't been, it would have been more complicated, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think that's right. It's more to talk about anyway.
Yeah, because I think we do hesitate. I think it feels kind of unromantic. Maybe it feels a bit confronting, as you say. Maybe the guy's not going to, feel so great about you raising it. Maybe it'll feel like an accusation, and all these things play into you don't have the conversation. And if you're unmarried,
your idea is a really good one, Jasper's idea.
The
about
annual chat.
Having an annual chat, because the trouble with talking about those kind of issues out of the blue.
Yeah.
It's going to raise suspicions, never mind anything else.
Why is she asking? Yeah, why is he asking?
No, it's in our calendar.
Yeah.
So
Like an annual review
yeah, December.
with a financial
I was
advisor.
I think it sounds very unromantic. It sounds almost like a business meeting. But I think if you are living together without any arrangements in place, I think that's the least you should expect without raising any suspicions. But it's what has anything changed? I think that should be staple in anybody's cohabiting relationship.
I should say, Philippa, this is a particularly kind of key time for us to be talking about this because there's been a consultation, hasn't there, about fairer ends, how to end relationships in a fairer way. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, it's a bit of a mishmash actually, because they put together cohabitation rights, which I think everyone or nearly everyone agrees is a good idea. They've also raised the idea that prenups and prenuptial agreements and postnuptial agreements, called qualifying nuptial agreements, are going to be, at the moment it's quite discretionary. I say that if you tick certain boxes, chances are the court will uphold the agreement,
Right.
but the judge retains a discretion even still. So I think the idea is they're going to be set in stone, so that if you again tick the boxes, then your prenup or postnup will be recognised and upheld. And there's also stuff about the other one was having more codification of the financial rules, insofar as there are rules governing divorce, so that there'll be more certainty, because we have in this country we are very it's a bit of a gamble quite often. If you're getting divorced, it's not clear in the way that lots of countries have a more codified approach.
So the plan is more clarity, more certainty around money
Yeah.
in relationships.
And
this is married or unmarried?
This is both, actually.
So
it's
really
to
helpful.
it's to cover everything. And it sort of falls in and out of domestic abuse, but I'm not entirely sure why. And the one thing it doesn't mention is how can you afford legal advice? And of course, because legal aid's disappeared almost entirely, people can't get legal advice any longer if they don't have the money.
That is the point
That's
well
a
made,
very good
actually.
point.
If you end up legally wrangling with your partner who you're not married to, the person with the deepest pockets is probably going to come out on top. aren't they?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
that-
Another thing to think about.
Another reason to get married.
This is why we have this podcast, to chew over the pros and
Well,
cons.
you've heard it here
Yeah,
first.
you heard it here first.
I think it's been very interesting. Thank you all very much indeed.
Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been great.
We will be taking a short break in August, but we'll be releasing a special bonus episode with our series producer, Lucy Greenwell, looking back on the best bits from our Series 5 so far. Just a reminder, anything discussed on the podcast shouldn't be regarded as financial advice or as legal advice, and when investing, your capital is at risk. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.